Hi everyone, thank you. Thanks for joining and welcome to the panelists today. So we'll be talking on blockchain gaming and revolutionizing in-game economies and player ownership. But before we do that, I'd love it if our speakers could introduce themselves. Please go for it.
Hi, Sinjin Jung. I am the founder and game designer for my studio, the Studios. And we have our beta out on Sidechain, it's layer 3 on Arbitrum. And our lead title is called Meiji, My Angry Yakuza Girlfriend. And it's Web3 game. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Yusuf. I'm the Chief Knowledge Officer at Economies Brands. Prior to that, I was CTO at Economies Brands and I played many of the roles. At Economies Brands, I look after, amongst other things I look after, is the tower ecosystem, which basically connects different types of games. We started with a tower defense game and now has multiple things. Economies Brands is basically an operator as well as an investor in many Web3 ecosystems.
So I'm Avery Eisen. I'm the head of business development in North America for LimeChain. We are a Web3 and blockchain development consulting firm, and we work with a variety of different organizations and protocols to provide much needed on-chain expertise.
All right, so my name is Marcel, head of growth at FIO Protocol. We launched a layer 1 chain March of 2020, and all the protocol features are centered around improving the usability and simplicity of sending and receiving digital assets, requesting digital assets, and it's starting to play a bigger role in the gaming space as well.
Awesome, thank you guys. So blockchain gaming has always been at the forefront as one of the top use cases for blockchain technology, and is also changing the face of the gaming industry by altering how in-game value can be created, owned, and exchanged. So just to dive into that with the first question, given one of the recent announcements from Epic Games to launch more blockchain-based games on its platform, how do you see traditional gaming giants embracing blockchain technology, and how do you see this driving mass adoption? Don't know who would like to kick this one off. Go for it, Wayne.
So the biggest thing about that is a lot of the traditional gaming studios and gaming companies have been, I guess, reluctant to do it. And I think it's going to be a catalyst. Nobody wants to be first, but nobody definitely wants to be last. So you're going to start to see that more. And I think we're going to get past the point where we're going to call them blockchain games or Web3 games. Every game can have a Web3 and blockchain element that is integrated into it, and in many cases the user may not even realize it. So when they start to realize that and the benefits that it'll have, I think we're going to see a catalyst. It's going to kind of like a snowball rolling downhill. You're going to see little by little, and then all of a sudden everybody's going to be, they're all going to be in it, wanting to have some kind of element, some kind of feature, because it's more about the benefits to the user and also the benefits to the gaming studios that's going to make them want to do it, not just to do it because it's a trendy buzzword.
So I think, a couple of years ago when Web3 gaming was hot, there was a lot of what I call tourists coming in, right? Big names basically, who have backpedaled to some extent. Recently you saw Zynga divesting itself of sugar, right? I think maybe it'll take better distribution, right? Epic Games is just one level of distribution, right? The biggest challenge is still the challenges of distributing natively on mobile, which I don't know if it's going to be easy to solve unless there's a whole new, device. Like people are looking at it end-to-end. There's people are willing to basically look at devices, which are basically, so Sue is doing with X1 Play and other things, right? That may bring a different class of players coming in. Or you have like somebody like Sony coming in with their own layer 2 chain, so right? That may excite maybe somebody like EA and others to basically rethink and basically bring it. I think distribution has to be solved to some extent before I would feel the big players would not like it.
Yeah, sorry. So I think every major gaming studio would love to get into blockchain, and Ubisoft tried to before, but there's such a big, how do I say, like hatred towards crypto because the Web2 gaming market has been so overly monetized that players are pretty sick of it. And so this idea of player ownership really hasn't translated very well into the wider, Web2 traditional gaming market. So that comes to the fact that I think that the model hasn't been solved yet. And so until we get games in Web3 that are actually creating revenue through the idea of ownership or through the use of ownership, it's going to be very difficult. But with, to Yusuf's point about is this maybe the right distribution channel or not? Well, for PC games, even if it is a great distribution channel, the fact they're taking 17% revenue for transactions doesn't seem like that bad because it's a lot cheaper than iOS or Google or even Steam. But if you're running an open economy with an in-game token that's live, a 17% tax on that gross, right, equals a huge amount net to your game economy. So how can you run your economy and make revenue that way if the token is also a form of liability against your game economy? These haven't been answered yet, and so I think we're still at that stage where we need to focus on modeling, and then when we have a hit game, distribution will start to form around it.
To be honest, I don't know how realistic of an expectation it is to hope for the top dogs in the gaming industry to completely shift their business model away from something that's been working for them for the last 20 years. We've seen these companies increase their year-over-year profits for I don't know how long. However, I do believe this leaves an opening for leaner, meaner startups who are looking to disrupt, add value, and are willing to take a bet on innovation to come in and disrupt this space. But ultimately, I think that the push needs to come from the end user, and they need to make a decision whether or not they are in favor of ownership or leasing to never own.
Great, some interesting points there, thank you. And moving on a little bit from that and covering some of those points, we've seen significant traction. What changes or innovations do you think are needed with this module to create long-term sustainable engagement, especially given the recent dips in P3 game economies?
Yeah, so I think there's a huge divide in the conversation over the last 3 years since Axie really took off, right? So let's say about late 2021, Play to Earn was still very hot, lots of clones were coming out, and it looked like GameFi or Play to Earn was going to keep going, and then all the economies collapsed, right? And so when you revisit all what is Play to Earn, you look at that it's a fantastic incentive structure for onboarding, for user acquisition. But if you can't maintain the economy, and if the incentivized token drops because it's not structured properly, then it all goes to crap, right? So I think we have a divide right now in like 2024 when we talk about like GameFi, which is gamifying like DeFi, and then you still have some play to earn games which pretty much are some type of Ponzi-nomic structure because they haven't looked at really how are we creating revenue, right? And now the market is dead. You can't just float your token and hope people will come in because they're excited on a speculative value. I think the other issues with our general market is that because we're so much on speculation short term, we haven't really looked at revenues yet, right? So once we start to get into revenues and look towards the value of player ownership, which isn't really just ownership, it's what do you do with that ownership? And creating more digital kind of businesses or engagement of that type of content, I think that we'll still see a change, but we're not anywhere close to finding a model yet that's been really proven.
So I concur with Sinjin that the early games for the Play to Earn were basically did not have a deep enough gameplay to basically have a deep revenue model, right? free-to-play gaming also took a while, like, until Machine Zone and basically the mainland Chinese developers, they now basically mastered the art of basically monetizing that. That methodology, when it comes to, you could say, blockchain gaming, it's, things are just starting to come in, right? Tooling is also improving substantially, onboarding of users, right? Abstracting wallets and everything, right? I think when basically people should feel they're playing a game. The play to earn as an incentive structure, as you said, that's like instead of paying the platforms today with like the cost of ads being so high, it's, I think projects are perfectly fine, paying the end users directly. So I think using tokens as an acquisition is fine, then combining what people are earning and then giving them an experience where they're willing to spend back that token, right? I think that is what is needed, I think that's, and can that tokens be used across multiple games? Like a single game by itself, I don't think can absorb a token. Earlier, tokens were very large and they were not being used by multiple games, right? So now you have to have, strategies have to be around that. You need to have a family of games which are basically centered around a single token to be able to absorb it.
I think, building off of what Sinjin said, I think the largest contributing factor to player attrition is watching the token that you spent weeks or even months earning drop 40% in value in a week, or in some cases, even a day. But this is an issue that's going to persist regardless. There is no magical feature or tech that's going to automatically make this issue disappear. These games are built off of the idea of as close to, if not infinite growth. You constantly need new players coming into your ecosystem. Someone comes in, they say, okay, I'm willing to spend $50 on this game. They spend it, and then that money needs to be redistributed within the ecosystem. I think of these games as caves almost, right? There's no light, no food, no water, no liquidity, no life. But this isn't necessarily a problem that is unique to these in-game economies. Almost all economies at a large enough scale are investment is put into them off the idea of speculating on long-term growth over time. So I would say that my best advice to these individuals who are building these games is to go out there and build the best game possible and build the best possible brand around your game that you can, like a Rockstar or Nintendo. And this obviously isn't an easy task, but I don't think any of us would be in this industry if we were concerned with taking the easiest possible path.
Let me just ask a question real quick. How many people here have played a play-to-earn game in the last few years? Raise your hand. How many of you are still playing a play-to-earn game? Yeah, I mean, it's very few, right?
That's your job, bro.
You better be, right? Yeah. So the point being that play-to-earn games 1.0, they weren't fun. Most of them were not fun, and most people were just logging in, doing mundane tasks just to earn a reward. And you're right, there's got to be better economies in the game. A couple of you guys have said that. It's got to be a circular economy. Why would someone want to spend their time to earn a token if there's a play-to-earn model? But then also, what's that economy to where, okay, I could also have the option to buy that token, and then how would I want to spend the token, which was mentioned. So we've got to, one, fix the games. Let the game developers focus on building great games that people are going to play no matter what, and then build an incentive structure that creates a circular economy where people are going to want to, people will be selling the token, and others are coming in, they're going to want to buy the token, but then through different gameplay and tournaments and stuff, they can also earn that token as well. That's the only really viable model for play to earn. If it's just everybody's playing the game just because they want the token and they want to sell it, well, you can look at the chart of every single one of those. They go up and they go down, and they don't really recover unless they solve that problem.
And on that, talking about creating value for players, for example, we've seen Ubisoft and Square Enix experimenting with NFTs and the emergence of new NFT standards. How do you see NFTs evolving in the gaming ecosystem to offer more utility rather than just being speculative assets?
Yeah, so the question is like, are NFTs and the form of ownership simply a feature, or is it a core design element, like mechanic model, right? If you think it's a feature, then you could say, okay, Fortnite has like NFTs, now it's gonna work, right? But it cannibalizes their current business model that does work. And does it, even if you created an exact replica with Fortnite with skins, would people kind of turn over? And the answer is probably no, because it's not a 10x kind of thing, right? I mean, if we look at it and we say what a real open economy should be doing, what should an NFT really be doing, is that the NFT should extend the life of the game. So most mobile games will last maximum like 2 years, maybe 8 months if they're a clone. Most PC games will last, again, 2 to 3 years, unless they're an esport. And esport comes out once every 5 years if we're lucky, and lasts 5 to 10 years. But if you had a persistent asset that could be used in an interoperable economy, that was linked by an economy, that actually had enough sinks because, like what Yusuf said, it was an enough robust economy to handle not just the tokens, but to invest those tokens into NFTs that acted not simply as consumer products, but as investable assets that would be the building blocks for a digital business or an in-game like shop or something like that that actually generated revenue from being part of the participation in the ecosystem. And that money was funded back into the game for downloadable content or extending out the game itself. And you had these kind of forever games. I mean, that's particularly what we're looking at, is like, how can you use NFTs for ownership that are the key digital assets to grow the game so the game goes beyond the 2 to 3 year lifespan, in fact 5 to 10 to 20 years. And then, you have to really question, right? Is the model of a speculative asset going to work with games? And being in the GameFi space and being in video games for like 30 years, I have to conclude absolutely not. Because games take time to build. You need a core user base to build that out. Whether, we say like games are recession proof, and the reason why is because the user base becomes so enamored with the game, like culturally or with clans or their identity as a gamer. If you don't have that kind of almost digital identity in that game, the game can't survive, right? And we're asking a lot from the gamers, right? We're asking them to spend their time, trust us, to play our game and not play other games, right? So, I think the question really needs to be on the forefront, like, is this like a feature or is this a core new paradigm? And are we really going for 10x here, or are we just trying to get like a little bit of money?
Yeah, I mean, some of those points all the points you gave were really great. When you think about the NFT, I mean, we've heard it earlier about the token needs to have utility outside of just that one game. The same concept, right? Same thing with an NFT. How can it be utilized? And it can be utilized across multiple different games. That's when you're going to see really it catch off. And I think the speculative side that'll come later, but we can't focus on that from the beginning. It's got to be right. What does the gamer get for this? What's the long-term benefit? Why is this better than the traditional assets that are in regular games right now? And I think it's great, right? I'm playing this one game, first-person shooter game, and then I go to this other game that's a questing game, and that same gun I had there, when I connect my wallet here, maybe it's a sword or something else I can use. Creating that cross-functionality to where there's more utility in NFTs, and then I think the other aspect they need to focus on is NFTs kind of evolving as the gamer levels up, because when they do get involved and enamored with those games, they don't really care if it's an NFT or not. It's what do they earn that they can show off, some kind of badge or something else, and if those NFTs evolve as they hit certain levels or certain milestones, then that's going to be more incentive for it. And then the value will come on the backside, because you'll have rarity and other things that are established. So you can't leave with speculating on is this going to 10x? It's just got to be a fun game, high demand, and then I think the speculation will come on the backside. And that's the best thing for the gamers too. Last thing gamers want is they're trying to accumulate assets for a game, and all the speculators come in and buy up everything, so then it costs them 10x more just if they wanted to get involved in that game.
So my take is when the NFT summerhead would put it with the PFP, kind of wave, right? That gamers kind of conflated a lot of this. PFP, were very speculative driven, were kind of low supply, right? Nothing says that a game needs a low supply, and they should not be, right? In the end, if you try to basically build on low supply, that means you're limiting the number of people who can participate, right? I think that put off a lot of, you could say, users to basically participating in long term in basically Web3 gaming. The fact that everybody equated that, okay, I need to invest X number of dollars in an NFT now, not every NFT is going to become like a board ape and basically shoot up in price, right? Gaming NFTs were different, right? The low, and so at the same time, low cost chains were not as relevant as they were before. So the cost of transacting was pretty high. Right now, the cost of owning an NFT, particularly if you do open editions, the cost of transacting has lowered down substantially, right? NFTs, I view them as stores of culture, right? And that has to be kind of what has to be educated to gamers, that don't treat them as speculative things. It's like marking points at different stages in your gaming type of thing. And if you choose to exit, maybe somebody chooses to enter a game with whatever buffs and things you basically carried on, and valuing your time and basically paying them. Right? So I could have played a game for X number of years, I want to move on, but my entire state in the game is basically available. People buy and sell World of Warcraft accounts, right? It's done. How can you sell your entire state in a game via an NFT? Yes, that should be possible. So games have to allow for that, NFTs have to capture that, and there has to be other people interested to say like, hey, I can start from the scratch, or I can start from a game. I know Sinjin maybe is very good at it, and basically he wants to move on, but I can basically use his avatar or character and start from there. And I'm willing to pay a certain premium for it.
Yeah, building off what Yusuf said, I think the clearest answer is digital identities, right? Allowing these users to create an account, tokenize it, own it, build it up, and then potentially resell it on secondary when it's time for them to move on. They see that it's proven out value, or they've just lost interest in it overall. Adds this additional layer of monetization that allows these users to capitalize on all the time that they've spent within these games, grinding it out, getting the rarest skins, the highest rankings, etc., which could potentially solve this attrition issue we're talking about earlier, right? Where now the user has an actual dollar amount that is tied to the amount of time and effort that they've put into this game, which serves as another layer of incentivization to keep them coming back.
Awesome, thanks. And something that Sinjin touched on as well is interoperability, so I just want to touch on that a little bit. Interoperability of in-game assets across games has long been a promise of blockchain gaming, but has remained largely unrealized. What technical and economic hurdles need to be overcome to make this a reality?
Sorry, I'm a nerdy game designer, so I actually studied economics as well. So, the thing with metaverse is very funny is that, Meta, Facebook changes it, they expect to go big, and metaverse is huge around the world in terms of something investable. I don't need to, explain that to my good friend from Animoca. But from a game designer's point of view is that a metaverse is a development from a game, right? So like social media is like reflection of like real life interaction, right? But a metaverse is really the reflection or the growth of the game. So if you think about what a metaverse was traditionally in a very non-structured way, is when outside the game you get social structures forming, like clans, guilds, trading, houses, so on and so forth, right? So for me, from the gaming point of view, right, interoperability first has to start with the core game. Now, there are other attempts that have been made in the last 3 years, mainly for mobile developers because they can spin up games really quickly, or like browser-based casual. you spin up these games, but they're all the same type of game, and so there's no progression in terms of the economy, right? And so if you create multiple games, but yet they're not connected in their economy, they're not like kind of growing out as if it was like a city or a settlement, right? The metaverse falls flat because that gaming experience can be gained from somewhere else with less risk or less complication, right? So from a game designer's point of view, it's actually a very slow process. It's like growing a tree in the sense that like first you get the core branches, the core trunk done, and then from that point on, every game that comes on board is designed specifically to work for an outreach of that economy. So you earn in one game, but you can get a token in another game that you can come and bring it back to that first game that you have to go play that other game in order to get, right? So MMOs typically have enough sinks and faucets and burn mechanisms to be robust enough to handle an economy, right? But even those may be in some ways limited. But a traditional game just simply can't handle an open economy structure because I think it comes down to this, right? If the economy is the main thing that's creating interoperability, and no one has kind of figured out how to manage an open economy because the token has a secondary circulating supply that actually can work against you, you need to create, I guess, two things: is that structure where it's robust enough to take care of that token economy, and that solution also is that interoperability, right? You have to kind of design it step by step. And I know maybe some people will disagree with me that you can kind of make it flat, but thus far it hasn't worked out.
I don't think there's necessarily a specific technical hurdle that needs to be overcome. I think it's more of an economic decision from the game developer themselves of, okay, what is our incentive to do so? Why are we going to build out interoperability within our game? And right now, I think that sentiment needs to be driven by the end gamer themselves. There needs to be some kind of push for this. Right now, traditional gamers are very anti-Web3, and I think that this comes from a place of gaming is the one place where they can log on and F off and not have to think about their job or their relationship or bills that they have to pay. It's a form of escapism for them. And so then they hear these terms get thrown around like in-game NFTs and decentralized economies, and they immediately think crypto, which has a fairly negative reputation among the general public. And I think, please, stay as far away from this place as possible. This is the one place I can go where I don't necessarily have to think about money. And I think that a decision needs to be made on the consumer's part, whether or not they want to keep spending billions and billions of dollars on these useless skins that have no inherent value and giving that money to centralized companies, or if they'd rather transact with their fellow peers for something that they perceive to have value. And until that sentiment changes, I don't think we're going to see a significant push in that direction.
I'll give a plug for Blockchain Game Alliance, because what they're doing is bringing people that are building in the space together, because we haven't seen an interoperability because everybody's in their own silo building their own thing. And then when you start to talk and we start to collaborate, you say, oh, you're doing this, but you should talk to this person because they're building something, and let the game developers focus on building great games. And the other thing I think is stopping interoperability is just egos, right? Not necessarily just egos, also if a gaming, if someone's looking to launch a game and they want to have their own token economy, if they're going to use that as a fundraiser to fund their development, that's where the problem is. Whereas if I come into your ecosystem and there's already a token out there, I think there needs to be some kind of independent that is managing that token system that will be deployed and then used across multiple games. And I think all we really need is a small group of test cases to show that this really can work and is viable, and then we'll start to see more and more people come to that instead of trying to launch their own economy, launch their own assets. I think the interoperability piece is important because that's the biggest value I see. I play this game, I get to a certain point, I can go and I can utilize something else in this game. but it also brings people to that whole ecosystem, makes the whole ecosystem stronger.
Well, I don't have much to add. I think most of it is covered already. So I think maybe interoperability comes around the concept of weights, like, how much does, maybe there's like a form of a DeFi exchange which says, if I've achieved this in a certain game, can I basically swap it? And what is the exchange rate for a token of this, right? We're looking at interoperability, but maybe it's like, hey, shall we swap assets, right? How does it swap, right? These are different formats, like, and Avery says traditional gamers don't like it. I would argue that that's more of a Western-centric gamers, I think, who shy away from capitalism, right? Particularly in Asian gamers are perfectly happy to basically embrace, and that doesn't mean necessarily from emerging markets, right? I think even if you take somebody from Korea, till 50 years ago, right, they, things could be taken away from them. So they have a deep desire for like, hey, do I own something? Right? I think that's inherent, right? If you're from the United States or a Western economy which has a massive rule of law for a while, you basically feel like, what do you mean like ownership, right? I own this. They never realize that they're renting it. Like, it's not inherent to them because they've never experienced that in their life, right? It's also about what real world experiences guide, like what have their parents faced, like have they lost something because the government overnight switched it? What happens in China, in other emerging, that governs how gamers basically think about, the real world assets, and then they can basically map and say, okay, this could happen in the digital world also, right? Ethereum was kind of built because Vitalik's World of Warcraft, character was nerfed, and he was like, hey, they could just nerf it.
Cool. There are so many other topics here to cover, like regulations, policy, different chains, DAOs. But just to wrap up on this one, if I can get a brief sentence from you each of looking ahead, how do you think blockchain gaming will disrupt the traditional gaming industry over the next 5 to 10 years? Avery, go for it.
I mean, I'm a gaming maxi. I think that over the next 5 to 10 years, as technology permitting, we will all be spending a vast majority of our time in these virtual worlds and virtual experiences. But no grown adult is going to want to spend the majority of their time in a world where they own nothing. And I think that blockchain provides the technology layer that enables this ownership, which any actual adult is going to be something that they desire.
Just gonna say real quick, I think the 5 to 10 years from now, it's gonna be prevalent everywhere, but it's gonna be it's gonna be built into where most users don't even realize they're using Web3 technology, don't even realize it's blockchain. They just know the benefits they get. Those of us that understand the technology are gonna realize how great it is, and those that don't understand it, it's gonna be a part. We're gonna not stop calling it Web3 or blockchain games. Just like today, we don't call a company an internet company, everybody's online.
Yeah, so I think in 5 years we'll basically be like looking at just gaming. Blockchain gaming is there. Every game uses some form of the blockchain and whatever it thinks is appropriate. And I hope we don't talk about blockchain gaming as there's no separate panels on blockchain gaming.
As a game designer and owner of a gaming studio, I just pray that we survive into the next 5 years. So if anyone has any faith or religion and would like to see gaming continue, please pray for us, because it's really pretty tough. So as long as we're still talking about gaming in 5 years, I'll be happy.
Thank you guys. If you guys have any questions for the speakers, please feel free to catch them outside. Thank you to the panelists for sharing your insights, and thanks very much.
Oh, photo, yes.
Thank you very much.